Hey everybody, Robert here. Welcome back. Hope you guys had a great week. I want to take a quick minute just to address the horrible thing happening right now in Southern California. These fires, that's just, it's horrible. A lot of people that I know are going through a really hard time right now. So I just ask everybody to keep, everyone out there in your thoughts. But, moving on to what I want to talk about this week, which is pivotal to any movie, and that's casting. Can't make a movie without actors. There's basically two schools of casting, or there's two ways to approach casting in the film industry, and that's going to be union and non-union talent. Union talent is, for the most part, you're more professional actors, usually you're better, you're more experienced actors are going to be members of SAG-AFTRA, which is the Screen Actors Guild. One of the contracts that will be available to you, one of the two, is going to be the ultra low budget agreement. I've made a couple of films under this agreement. It basically means any production filmed for less than $300,000. Minimum, you have to pay $241 per day per actor, plus a pension and health contribution per actor, anybody in your movie, whether they're a union member or not. A couple of things to really be aware of when it comes to making a SAG film for very low money is if you don't have experienced unit production manager, if you don't have an experienced line producer, first AD, someone who understands how important it is to keep your time cards organized, your meal times, everything by the book, you can get in a lot of trouble with SAG. You can really end up, worst case scenario, they shut you down. That's rare, but I mean, you can end up owing a lot of money and just, it's something you really need to be ready for. Of course, if you're starting out, I would probably advise not to do it, which I hate to say because, I'm a pro-union guy, but I think if you're just making your first film, it's better. You're going to have enough to deal with without having to worry about getting everybody in a situation that nobody's going to profit from. Another thing really to be cautious of is the deposit. It's a lot and you're not going to get it back if you have any type of distribution attached to your movie, or if you get distribution shortly after you finish it. The deposit usually comes out to about 150% of your total payroll for the film. That's money you just can never touch. You can't use it towards your pension and health. You can't use it towards payroll. Like I said, the money's not really refunded anymore unless you literally have no distribution whatsoever. Then they will refund the money so long as you obeyed all the rules. You didn't get penalized for missing a meal or something like that, or overtime or anything like that. So, it's a big undertaking. Obviously, it brings your film to a higher level. You have not just name talent, hopefully, but you have more experienced, more credible actors. I mean, it's a good thing, but you really have to be ready for it. The last thing to mention about the ultra low budget agreement is if you don't have distribution yet, you are required to get the distributor to sign what's called an assumption agreement, which means that they take responsibility for paying out residuals. Your deposit that you've given, that let's say you have a distributor on board, they will basically deduct that amount. Let's say you had to pay 10 grand on a deposit. That will go towards paying out your residuals. Once that 10,000 is gone, every sale, every dollar that the movie makes, a percentage of that goes to the actors. So when it comes to distribution too, something you'll be really careful about is if you don't get an assumption agreement from your distributor and you put the film out anyway, you are personally liable as the signatory producer for paying out those residuals. It's happened to filmmakers. In fact, it happened to me at the first film that I released where, I didn't see any money from the film, but the film was still generating revenue. So I ended up having to pay out of my own pocket to cover the residuals, cover the pension and health, and the residual income. So you can literally, if you don't have a distributor signing these agreements, then you can literally end up losing money on getting distribution. Distribution can end up costing you rather than paying you. So be very careful. SAG also offers a second contract, which is kind of neat. It's kind of new. I don't personally know it. I never used it because it's got some really strict criteria to it. And it's called the micro budget agreement. It's really an experimental agreement. It's not meant for a film that's going to be released commercially, something that you're going to take to market and hopefully make money on. I don't know what would happen. I imagine if you were to, let's say, make a film under this contract, end up getting distribution, which really you're not supposed to do. It's supposed to be limited to film festivals, free exhibition, places like YouTube, things like that. I'm sure, well, I'm not sure, but I imagine if you wanted to essentially make that a commercialized project where you'd bring it in and try to get professional distribution and start monetizing it, then you probably have the option to upgrade your contract to, a modified low budget or an ultra low budget agreement. But don't quote me on that. I don't know. Talk to your SAG rep. Don't take my word for it. Advantages, of course, you can work with any actor again. You could work with name talent. The budget has to be limited to $20,000 or less, which is really why it pretty much will apply to short films for the most part. And you know, it's again, you have to be very careful. I think you can negotiate pay at any rate for the actors. I don't think there's any minimum pay, but still, you know, you're going to have a hard 8 hours out for your talent. You can't be going overtime. You've got to be really with it, and you got to know what you're doing. So either the ultra low budget or the micro budget agreement. Those are basically your options if you're going to go SAG. Which again, like, a lot of positives, a lot of good reasons to go SAG, but if it's your first time and you have 20 grand to make your movie, you probably don't want to, unless you're just going to go the film festival route and you're not interested in distributing. The second way to cast a film is the easier way. Yes, you're for the most part going to get a step down in quality, but there are a lot of very talented actors who are not necessarily union members or something called FICOR, which FICOR essentially what that means is a dues paying non-member, someone that pays their dues to SAG, but they're not a member, hence they can work on independent projects whether they're union or not. Those can be good. Those can be really good. You can pick up a couple of semi-name talent that kind of play in that area, that non-union, that kind of gray area. The next thing you're going to want to do when you're casting your movie is figure out, well, where are you going to get talent from? Well, it depends on where you are. If you're in LA, your options kind of sky's the limit, even for non-union talent. Sites like Actors Access can give you everything that you need. Actors can submit, they can upload their demos, and it's really cool. But that, again, if you're not in LA, I mean, the site works in other cities, of course, but I would be careful because a lot of people don't read it very carefully. So you get an actor you really like, and let's say you're in somewhere in the Midwest, and you say, oh, this person's great, let's bring him in. And you made clear you were in Detroit or whatever. They're going to say, wait a minute, I'm in LA. That happens all the time. People kind of carpet bomb these things. So be leery about that. I would actually kind of stay away from those big websites, those casting websites, for that very reason, because you're going to get hundreds, if not thousands of submittals, regardless of your budget. I don't care if it's a $10,000 budget movie. The moment a casting notice goes out, you're going to get bombarded. So please set up another tip I'll tell you about there. Create a new email account for your casting. Do not make it your personal account or you'll go insane. Just go on Gmail. It's free. I've done this for every movie I've made. It'd be like the name of the movie, whatever, maybe the year, if the name's not available, which of course it's not usually on Google, at casting at Gmail or whatnot, and really drive all your traffic there. Never give out your phone number because you're going to get text, you're going to get hit up bad. Like I said, regardless of the size of the project, people want to be in movies. So don't do that. Aside from the major websites, where would you go? Well, I would look in your community. I would look to see if there's any local casting going on, local talent agent. Most people that do, let's say, local commercial work would love to be a part of film. Local theater work, most of them would love to be a part of film. Maybe, they live in a market where there's not a lot of film work, so maybe they're really incentivized to get in front of a camera for you. Film schools are a great place, theater schools, places like that. Social media is quite good. I've done very well on social media. First thing you're going to need is a really good breakdown, what every character in your movie is, what age range, what requirements there are for the part, if there's any stunts, if there's anything like that, make sure that you are as clear as possible at everything you expect an actor to do before you send that breakdown. Really super crucial, if there's any type of nudity or even kissing, make sure that that's mentioned. You do not want to be in a situation where somebody's getting a call back and maybe you've offered them a part and now they, for the first time, are finding out they have to kiss someone on camera. That's not something they're comfortable with. Be really transparent as absolutely possible. Even if you don't think it's a big deal, just make sure that your talent who's submitting to your project understands exactly what would be required if they were to get cast. The next step, after you've gotten your notice out, you've probably gotten a decent amount of replies. A great thing today, and it's awesome, we don't really do open cattle calls, which is a negative term. I don't really like that term, but where we would essentially just see everybody, we'd kind of conveyor belt them in and out. Now what we do is we just use the self-tape process to kind of narrow down the selection of people that we really see who could possibly play this role. So you'd basically send sides, and what sides are, it's just a few pages of a scene, let's say, just a couple pages of your script, usually one scene. You want to keep it brief. If you can get away with one page for your first round auditions, that's kind of good too, because usually rule of thumb is a page is about a minute of screen time. So when you're looking at 200-300 submittals, you're gonna be really happy if you only got if you ask people to read one page as opposed to something like 5. Well, you'll go insane, you'll go crazy. And also keep in mind, guys, you can usually know within the first 10 to 15 seconds if the actor is going to work for you or not. Either you see it or you don't. Do they have the talent? Do they fit the role? And you don't need more than a couple of seconds at your first round auditioning. It gets a little more complicated the further we get into the process. But just your goal right now is to take all your raw submittals and organize them into, okay, these people I could see in the movie. You know, here's my number one, my number two, my number three choice for this role. Here's my number one, my number two, my number three for this role, and so on and so on. Work your way down the list. Then you can schedule a second. What I would usually do is still keep this thing virtual. I would go ahead and say, all right, well, now I'm going to give you some more challenging stuff. I'm going to pick a couple of scenes from the movie. Still going to keep it relatively brief, but anything that kind of shows the range of the character. Let's say the character needs to be really jovial and lighthearted, but then there's this really serious scene where they have to really get into it emotionally. You need to make sure that they have the range required for the role, because when you get on set, the one thing you're never going to be able to do is really work with talent and developing that when the bullets are flying, so to speak, on a low budget, on almost any budget, unless you're David Fincher or something. Set is a time not really to work and develop. It's a time to just, every minute that passes, you're just spending so much money. So you really have to make sure that your talent is where they need to be as much as possible. Of course, there's, sometimes actors might struggle finding the performance, and, the delays are inevitable sometimes, but you want to do everything you can to minimize that. And that all comes down to casting. I mean, there's an old saying, and I think it's very true, that directing a movie is really easy if you cast it properly. It's the easiest job in the world. And what you're kind of doing through all this is you're whittling down that list. You might have started with 200 names. Now you're probably at something like 50 or less names. All right, and then you might want to start checking availability, making sure that people are okay with the pay, making sure that they're available during the days that you need them. Then what I would probably do, depending on the role, if it's a big role, I usually like to meet an actor in person. Here, super important, again, you don't do this at your home. You don't do this at their home. You don't do this anywhere alone. You don't want to meet anyone in any situation like that. You want to rent a studio, or your local public library. Maybe they could let you use something, or a school, some professional public place where the talent feels comfortable and where you feel comfortable. And bring someone with you to run your camera, record your audition. Encourage them to bring someone with them. Encourage them to bring a significant other or a friend or whatever. We want to make sure that everything is above board. We want to make sure that people are comfortable, because that's the most important thing. What I might do next after meeting an actor in person and really feeling like I think they're good for the part, but let's just say this woman's playing the wife and I need to chemistry read her with a husband. So chemistry reads are essentially where you bring in, let's say you have 6 actors and you're looking for a couple. You'd see how people read off each other. You'd pair them up and you'd kind of see, okay, go through the process. How does actor A work with actor B, work with actor C, so on and so forth. Because chemistry is super important. I mean, people can be excellent on their own, but together they just don't work. And depending on the film you're making, that can be kind of do or die. So something to really pay attention to if you have any type of romantic involvement, or people are supposed to be related or whatever. I mean, again, depending on the type of movie you're making, this might really be an afterthought, but it's always something to keep in mind. Do people jive well together? Next, what you want to do with your actors, let's say, okay, you've got your movie cast, you're moving forward. Like I said before, you're never going to have the time on set to do much rehearsal. I mean, if any. Maybe if you're not running camera, if you have a DP, maybe you could take a couple of minutes to run lines. Usually actors they'll pair up together and run lines together when you're off setting a light or setting a camera or whatever. But, for the most part, everybody's got to be pretty much ready to go and off book. Off book means that they know the dialogue. There's nothing worse, and it's happened to me, where someone's come in, they're doing great in an audition, and as soon as we're going for real, they don't know the script, or their nerves or whatever, but that ends up really hurting the production, really slowing us down. And like I said, time is money. Never truer than on an independent shoestring budget film set, where just every second that passes, you're just burning through paper. So you don't want that to happen. One way to avoid it is to do rehearsals. The first rehearsal is kind of a generic thing. It's actually more for you as a writer, or if you're not the writer, for the writer to hear. It's called the table read. Today we pretty much just do those on Zoom, where everybody just goes around. Nobody's off book yet usually. They're just reading the pages and just kind of, we go through the entire movie. You play that back, maybe the writer listens to it, say, let's change that a little bit. Let's kind of, make some adjustments, maybe because you casted an actor who's a little different than what was written, and you might want to do some rewriting, something like that. Or a line just didn't sound as good as you thought it did when you wrote it. It happens all the time. Table reads are, get them out of the way. And then if time allows, and I really hope that it does, try to rehearse with your actors. Again, public place, Starbucks, whatever. But just run lines. Just run lines, run the scene, do all of that directing work, all of that performance work before you get to set. Okay? just, again, you will really thank yourself if you do, and you're going to hate yourself if you don't. And, you know, another thing, this is everyone's different, but as far as me as a director, within reason, I like to give my actors a lot of room. I'm interested in hearing their ideas. I'm interested in what they think about their character, how they think their character would react to something. I mean, for a minute, consider if you wrote the script and you've casted 40, I don't know, that's a lot for a small movie, but even 10 people. You know, the actor is playing one person. You're thinking about the entire movie, you're thinking about all the different roles. This person's only playing that one role. So kind of listen to them. They might have some really interesting insights, some really interesting ideas. It's, you know, it should never be, you know, like it's your way or the highway. If someone else has a good idea, please take advantage of it. I mean, as long as it doesn't deviate too much from your core vision, I encourage that. It also makes your actors really feel appreciated, that they're more than just, you know, reciting lines, that they are a part of the creative process, because they are. You know, you're hiring these people to bring your vision to life, but you can't do anything without them. So it's a good way to make them feel valued. It's a good way to get some excellent ideas. You know, we don't want to go full ad lib or something, but just, you know, just talk to them and ask them questions about the character. You'd be surprised what you can get. All right, guys, well, that'll do it for this little video. Just again, that's kind of my casting 101, real in and out, really quick, your union versus your non-union. There's a lot more to go over in a lot of detail, but I just thought this would give you just a little bit of an intro of how the casting process more or less works on the independent, ultra low budget level. And a lot of this applies to just film in general. But usually, you know, bigger budget films, you're going to have a professional casting director. You're going to be working with professional agencies and yada, yada, yada. So ULB film is going to be, again, you're kind of going to be doing a lot of this hard work yourself. But all right, folks, thanks so much for watching. I'll see you later. Bye.